Welcome to MUFON Midwest, where we discuss some of the most interesting UFO, UAP sightings in the heartland. MUFON field investigators and eyewitnesses share their amazing experiences with the public on this podcast. And now, here's your host for MUFON Midwest, Margie K.
Good evening and welcome to MUFON Midwest. We are here this evening with a really good show for you. You've seen him before, but we've got David Kreiter back with us today. So let me, all right. David Kreiter is the Chief Investigator for Iowa MUFON. He's completed hundreds of UFO investigations since he joined the organization in 2009. David attended the University of Iowa, where he studied psychology and computer science. He's a certified myoskeletal massage therapist and has owned and operated an upholstery business since 1972. David has written several books and won the National Independent Publishers Award in Science for his second publication, Confronting the Quantum Enigma, Albert, Niels, and John. Welcome to the program, David.
Yeah, thank you, Margie.
Well, thank you for joining me again. I know there's a lot going on in Iowa having to do with UFOs, but I think what we should do is just start off with asking you the question, how did you get interested in the subject?
Well, I've always been interested in the nature of reality, and my interest in UFOs and extraterrestrials and so on. It's just sort of a, outshoot of that. It's just one of the things I'm interested in about the nature of reality.
And have you seen UFOs yourself?
I have not. No.
Well, that's
anything that, yeah.
That's interesting because most investigators, most people who become field investigators, have seen at least one. So hey.
Yeah, Greg Anderson, our state director, he's never seen a UFO either, or anything that he can't identify. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to do some CE5 events up there in Iowa so you guys can see them. Because I have really good luck with those events. So we should try that out. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about three very important cases that you worked on over the years, and I'm just going to hand it over to you. We'll start with case number one, and I've got the photos loaded, so I'll pop them up when you say.
Oh, excellent. Okay, this first case comes out of Burlington, Iowa. It happened on June 16th of 2021. And it's MUFON case number 116599. And it involves a reported landing of a dome-shaped craft with physical effects. And it was classified by MUFON as a CE2. So approximately 2 weeks after a suspected landing of an unidentified object, and 5 days after receiving the MUFON report, State Director Greg Anderson and I arrived at the witness's home in Burlington, Iowa, where the witness and his wife, both retired, greeted us. And I have to hand it to Greg. He drove 5 hours from Council Bluffs to the Mississippi River to, help out with this case.
That's dedication.
And yeah. And the reported witness stated that he awoke at 2:30 a.m. on the approximate date of June 16th. To make a trip to the bathroom, he looked out of his west-facing bedroom window, which is about 25 feet above the ground. And despite the darkness, he was able to see a dome-shaped object in the commons area of their duplex. And he said it was about 10 to 12 feet in diameter, shrouded in a gray mist that seemed to be illuminated. And you can put up the first and second image if you want there.
All right. Number one.
Okay, that's where Burlington is located. Right, actually, that's right where that circled area is right where the witness is located. And to the right, you'll see the Mississippi River. And next image. Okay. This is a view out of his bedroom window. And he continued to the bathroom. And when he came back again to the window, the object was no longer visible. Measurements revealed that the witness was only 64 feet from the object, making it a close encounter. He said that he didn't report the witness or the sighting immediately, but when he noticed that the approximate 100-foot square anomalous greenish yellow pattern in the lawn remained visible for 2 weeks, he decided to report it to MUFON. Yeah, thank you, Margie. And there is the area. Now, go ahead.
And that wasn't, that didn't exist anywhere else, only in this spot?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was much more evidence. This is almost 3 weeks after the landing. So, it was getting sort of, how dead grass appears, getting a little brownish and so on, but it was much more green earlier on. So the witness said that around that same time as the reported sighting, he saw a string of bright lights quickly move across the yard one night. Other irregularities included electronic anomalies experienced at their home, such as watches stopping simultaneously and phones that went dead. And I'll quote what the witness said. He said, "I believe it was the morning after when our battery-powered watches and cell phones went blank. The phones came back on after rebooting, and the watches required resetting." And so after the interview, he led us out to the commons area where the light greenish yellow patch was still evident. And while Greg was taking electric, magnetic, and Geiger counter readings on the grounds, I stood near the landing site and took infrared photos one after another as I pivoted around. And I'm not even sure why I did this. It was broad daylight. But as it turned out, that was really important to this case. So although the readings were all background, normal background level, we decided, I was equipped to take soil samples, but we decided at that point not to. And I sort of wish in retrospect that I would have taken some soil samples. So anyway, after returning home, I looked at my photos taken on site and noticed that 2 consecutive infrared photos taken just 13 seconds apart featured a small orb. And here is that first photo. And you can see there at the end of the arrow, just beyond the shadow, is the first photo of the orb. And then the next photo, this is just taken 13 seconds later. You can see that it's moved off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not, an excellent photo analysis by any means. So I was wondering if, these were merely camera artifacts. So I decided to send them to Greg. And I'll quote what he says. He's very good at this, what he says about this analysis. He says, "It looks like the object moved in an angle from near where I was standing toward the tree and would have been parallel to the back of the house. The orb gets smaller between the 13 seconds differences in time. It has been established that the photos were taken from the same spot. as the size of the orb in each photo is different, getting smaller as it travels right to left, indicating that it indicates that the direction of travel was at an angle to the photographer and going further away. And then, I won't read the whole thing, but he said, if this was a dust mote, you would think that it would have moved completely out of frame in 13 seconds. It was not something on the lens, as the pictures before and after don't have any indication of an orb. So
it was slow moving.
That's a yeah. I guess I used to think that it would be. In 13 seconds, it didn't go too far, did it?
Yes.
This is sort of a side note about this case. The residents refer to this area as Ghost Hollow, and you might remember that the actual name of this place is called, where the duplex is and where the golf course is, it's called Spirit Hollow Golf Course. And
sounds like there's some legends going on there.
Yeah, well, there is.
Yeah.
The golf course sits on land previously occupied by the Sac and Meskwaki Indian tribes. And Chief Blackhawk, who was the leader of the Meskwaki tribe, he and his tribe were forcibly removed from this land in the 1832 war.
Oh,
so I don't know if that has anything to do with these anomalies, but
well, the picture of that, the ball of light or the orb or whatever you want to call it, those are pretty commonly seen with UFO investigations. Have you found in some of your various, the hundreds of investigations you've worked on, do you see that as a recurring thing?
I've had several orb cases, but not necessarily associated with, the sightings we were asked to investigate. There was a real good orb case in the middle of the state that I investigated a couple years ago, where the witness had his back porch just loaded with cameras. And that would be a case that I could talk about sometime in the future.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll have you back to do that. So you classified that as unknown?
This case, was an unknown UAV, And I have to reiterate that the witnesses were as credible as you could get, they just didn't know what was going on, and I don't think they were even into, the UFO field at all. But he only reported this because that, green area of the lawn was persistent for almost 3 weeks, and that's when he decided to report it.
Well, yeah, when you have hard evidence like that, it's very hard to dismiss it. The balls of light, those are difficult because you have so many people having different ideas about what they are. But I think it's interesting that they appear when people are doing paranormal investigations, and they appear when they're doing UFO investigations. So there's something going on. And
crop circles.
Yeah, definitely.
That
always people watch them form crop circles. Well, appear to anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you've got this Marengo case. You want to do that one next? Okay.
Sure. This case, number 69105, happened in 2015, and it was cited by MUFON as the top 6 cases of 2015. So I felt really good that that was recognized as that.
Yeah.
The reporting witness was watching a movie with her friend at his house in Williamsburg on Thursday, June 4th, 2015. And at around 10 o'clock p.m., they decided to leave the premise so that he could drive her home to Marengo, which is just 15 miles north. So as they left Williamsburg and proceeded north on County Road V77, they were enjoying the view of a starry night sky. There's very little lights in the area. It's a highway with rolling hills and farm ponds, very sparsely populated.
Mhm.
So very little light pollution. And you can put up an image there if you want.
Right there.
Yeah, this is their route from Williamsburg to Marengo, and where the line curves to the left up there, that's where it intersects Old Highway 6, which is also very sparsely populated, that area. So about a mile before they reached the highway, she noticed an extremely bright bluish-white light in the western sky. She said to her friend, "Is that bright planet? It seems lower and brighter." And her friend told her that he didn't think so because Venus was further to the right, further north of Marengo. And as it turned out, after investigation, it turned out that that light to the north, which he thought was Venus, was actually the star Capella. But either way, he said, well, it has to be a plane then, or a new cell tower or something like that. Well, she knew that it couldn't have been a plane because it was totally stationary. And she also knew that there were no cell towers in the area. So next image, please. So the X all the way to the right, that's where they first spotted this really bright light. That would be the middle vector there. That was where the object was. The bottom vector points to where Jupiter was, and we're not even sure. Jupiter was so close to the horizon that we don't even know if they would have seen it, actually. And the vector at the top one, very top one there, that points to what he thought was Venus, which was actually the star Capella. So they reached Highway 6 and turned west toward Marengo, which is about 3 to 4 miles away. They rolled down their windows and drove slowly, never taking their eyes off of that stationary object. As they approached their destination and got closer to the light, they could not see the source of light. They could now see that the source of light was a large black triangular object with a crisscross pattern of bluish-white lights. It was so close that she instinctively grabbed the door handle of her car, thinking that it might descend right on top of them. So instead of turning off the highway to their home, they proceeded on to the Amford gas station, located just on the highway there, on the outskirts of Marengo. Now they were the object would have been directly south of where they were. And it remained stationary over a cornfield just short of, just a short distance away. And he believed that it was only about 100 feet off the highway and about 75 feet in altitude. She said, we were in absolute shock. Next image. Yeah. And that is the bluish white edge of the triangle that with the crisscross patterns. And she said, and I'll quote, she said, it looked huge, and then it was just gone. We were almost directly under it at one point. I've never seen anything like it in my life. There was no noise, and the speed was something out of this world. It went from hovering near the highway with bright lights to hovering again to the east, about 4 miles away, which was about where they, came onto Highway 6. So,
I'll bet they were in shock seeing that.
Yeah, yeah. And as they drove into Marengo, she looked east to see if she could still see it, and she wrote, it was hovering about 4 miles away, which I just indicated, near the highway intersection, exactly where we turned onto Highway 6. And then she said that shortly after, it just disappeared. So after, the witness, after he returned back to Williamsburg, he called the Amfred gas station to see if anyone else had seen this object. And the recipient of the call said that, as far as he knew, no one else saw it. And the witness said it was an experience he would never forget. Well, former Chief Investigator Beverly Trout, who I'm sure most of you know, and I traveled to Marengo, Iowa, to that gas station where the interview was conducted with both witnesses. And I presented the witnesses with several maps. I wanted them to mark, where they were at each location so that we could take some measurements and so on. And then I asked him to draw a sketch of what he saw. I always like to have a sketch. And he then attempted a sketch, and while he was doing that, I simultaneously was drawing a sketch from his description. And he looked over at my sketch and he says, "That's it exactly." And so from that kind of crude sketch, I did that painting that you saw in the previous image of the black triangle. Yeah, with the crisscross pattern. And, he said it was 10 feet thick, and let's see, 20, he thought it was 20 to 30 yards on each side, so it was enormous. And, that would make it about a quarter of the size of a football field. And he believed that it was only about 75 feet off the ground. So I wanted to take more measurements. So we asked the witnesses to come outside of the gas station there where we were and walk over, and I wanted him to point out the altitude, Yeah. And he said, well, it was about the height of those power lines there across the highway. So I took some measurements with my clinometer and found that it was 15 degrees above the horizon. And, if the witness's estimate that it was 75 feet above the ground, which kind of looks like it might have been, then the land distance would have been 278 feet and the air distance 288 feet. So that also qualifies as a close encounter. And we had one piece of evidence that was lacking, which I really wanted. So Beverly called the witness and asked him to hold an object at arm's length so that we could get the apparent size, And he did just that. And it turned out he brought a very small 6-inch dinner plate, held it at arm's length, and he said, "This is about this what would have covered the object at arm's length." So, it was enormous. And using 15 degrees as the arc angle and 288 feet as the air distance, I used the law of sines to calculate that the actual size of the object was 76 feet. or about 25 yards. And this is exactly what he estimated. He said between 25 and 30 yards outside. So, and both of these witnesses were so credible, and they were really concerned about keeping their identity, secret. And in fact, Beverly, who called him, I had called him several times at the beginning of this investigation, and Beverly always had a knack for, communicating with people, and she tracked him down at where he worked, and they finally answered the phone, and their two witnesses were in their mid-50s, very credible, as I said, and they both held high-profile jobs in their respective towns. And they wouldn't say what their jobs were, obviously, but we noted that, if that was the case, if their names came out, everybody in, Williamsburg would have known him, and everybody in Marengo would have probably known her. So that's why they were so, close about their identity.
Sure.
So, yeah.
That's pretty common in smaller towns when people know each other and they don't want to have labels put on them.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
are we ready for the next one then?
Yeah, sure.
And I don't suppose there was any trace evidence left behind on that one.
No. By the time we got there, the corn was kind of high. And I thought about, just going to the neighbors and knocking on the door, that had that cornfield.
Oh, yeah.
But, I should have done that in retrospect. I wish that I had. But, it's a regret. I probably should have.
Yeah, I don't know. These days, people are pretty leery of strangers coming and knocking on their front doors.
Yeah,
it's not something that I do, but I knew several men in MUFON who will feel comfortable doing that. But
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this next one is Britt, Iowa. What part of the state is that in?
That is in the midsection of Iowa. We've had some people call that a hot spot. So, we talked about the case with Chad, where he was, there's a couple. Yeah, you could bring that up if you want. But this case was nominated as another top 6 case of that of 2015.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah. Anyway, it happened at 9:30 p.m. during a total eclipse of the blood moon. And State Director Greg Anderson, former Chief Investigator Beverly Trout, and I all traveled to Britt, Iowa to interview the people involved. And one of the reasons this was such a fantastic case is that there were 7 witnesses and 14 triangular objects. And Britt, Iowa has a population of only 2,000 people. It's a very small town and declining. The population is declining. It's located, as I said, in the north central part of the state, not far from Clear Lake, which is the home of the Surf Ballroom. I don't know if people outside of Iowa know of the famous Surf Ballroom or not. And located just 9 miles to the north is Crystal Lake, and that's where the headwaters of the Iowa River are. And do you want to put up that next image?
Nope, not that one. Let me get, here we go.
There you go. Yeah. This is a drawing that Greg did. and it features. I did the drawing of the painting of the triangle. That's what you'd see above. And Britt, Iowa, is the national headquarters of the Hobo Convention, which they've had ever since 1900. And every year they have a parade and crown the Hobo King and Queen. So next image.
Oh,
yeah.
That's unusual.
Yeah. And there's the Hobo Museum. And this is a photo I actually took 2 years after we did this interview. I'll talk about that later. But I got into that museum, and just as a human interest story, I was looking around at all the paraphernalia, and I looked up on the wall where there were tons of photos, and I go, oh my God, I know that guy. I knew one of the hobos that was crowned king.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, and the reason I knew him was I had a shop in Iowa City right next to the train depot, and he would come off the train and ask if he could store his gear in my shop. And he was a very bright man in his early 30s at that time. He was a writer, a poet, and oddly enough, his goal in life was to become Hobo King. So
oh, well, we all have to have goals, right?
I know.
Oh,
so anyway, so I'll get to this case now after that. On that September day, Jeff from Minneapolis was visiting his friend Mark, and that evening they went to their friend's home on the very northwest side of town to watch the total eclipse of the blood moon, where there were 5 other people attending. So there were a total, of 7 witnesses in all. And just before the eclipse of the blood moon, about 9:15, at that time the moon is about 25 degrees in altitude. Jeff noticed that there were several flashes of light that looked like, camera flashes right in front of the moon. And a few seconds later, an object which was completely silent appeared above the treetops overhead. And they could see there was sort of a rounded triangular shape with several white lights on the edges. And Mark, the other witness, said that he believed that the white lights were on the 3 corners of the triangle. And he said there's a flashing red-green light in the center. And I asked him, I always like to get apparent size. And he said it was about the size of a golf ball held at arm's length. So it was either very close or very large, one of the two. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you. And as the first object was approaching, a second, identical looking object appeared from a location south of where the first object originated. And this object seemed to be a bit lower in altitude and was moving at a high rate of speed in a northwesterly direction toward the first object. In fact, Jeff thought that the 2 objects would collide. And from his perspective, he said that it looked like they missed by just inches. And next image, Mark. Yeah. And so rather than pointing out, where each triangle was, I just decided to do this drawing and sort of a 3D image. And you can see where the paths almost intersected there of the triangle 1 and triangle 2. Well,
excuse me, just 1 minute, David. Do you hear that strange? Do you hear that strange sound?
Yes.
What is that?
Yes, that's my printer cleaning itself. That happens about once every 2 months.
Oh,
And it happened
just
now, and
it decides to do it
thankfully,
right now. Okay,
mercifully,
so you're not being abducted by a
it
UFO. All right.
no, it finally quit, so you won't be hearing it anymore.
Okay.
So anyway, uh, so this object then, after it passed overhead, it hovered for about an hour, and the second object moved to the northeast, so it kind of curved around and hovered in place for a couple hours. So at around 10:30, according to the witness, a third triangular object appeared in the east, and it traveled toward the first object and then hovered about 100 yards, what appeared to him 100 yards above the first object. And eventually, the first lower object began to move slowly to the west until it disappeared from view. And I could go on and on. There are so many triangles. I just decided to do another drawing. Yeah. And so I thought this would be and it's kind of small, so I don't know. You can't really see all the triangles and all the positions. When the former editor of the MUFON journal saw this, he goes, I don't get it. But
Okay.
so, yeah, what you see though,
3D.
really, yeah, well, I tried to make it that way. I'm not an artist by any means, but at the base of this is Britt, Iowa, and the vectors that are emanating from Britt there on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
those are your azimuth readings. So in order to find a particular triangle, you follow one of the vectors to, let's say, east or west or wherever, and then go up, and that would be the altitude of the triangle. So I don't know, I've got 1, 2, 3, about 7 or 8 triangles out of 14. And so anyway, at around, could you go to the next photo, please? Almost forgot. Yeah, this is possibly a better view. This is a drawing that Greg Anderson did, and it's a view from above, and it also shows where all these triangles were at different times. And keep in mind that they hovered for long periods of time. So okay, well, anyway, at around 11 p.m., the two witnesses left their friend's house on the north side of town and returned to Mark's home to take a break. Jeff reported that he said it was almost too scary to go outside, but their curiosity won out, and between the hours of like 11 and 2 a.m., they went out to check the sky at various times. And he says that the second, third, and fourth triangular object were still there, hovering in the sky. And yes, you're probably wondering, did they take photos? Which would be obvious, since it's there so long. And they did. And interestingly, all the stars, he said, although the triangular objects were brighter than the stars, the background stars showed up, but the objects did not. So
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. We don't have any digital photography. And you're also probably wondering, where are the other witnesses? Well, after we did this interview, we gathered together, all of us. We drove to the place where the witnesses were, the home where they were viewing, the party where they were viewing the blood moon. And she was not home, but we did a call, sort of a conference call. They put us on speaker. We were able to ask the third witness. We asked her questions just like we did Mark and Jeff, and not trying to lead her on or anything. and she corroborated almost everything that the two main witnesses said. The rest of the witnesses at the party were younger, so they were basically kids, so we didn't interview them. But back to Mark's place, where the two witnesses retired, they had all kinds of anomalies that happened to them that night. And if you want, I can go into them, or we can move on.
No, definitely.
Okay.
We want to hear that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mark, his job required him to use his cell phone every day. And he showed us on his cell phone how everything, that all the information he had on his phone had mysteriously disappeared after this event. And he'd never had anything like this happen before. And Jeff, the rear hatch door on his new car didn't work and totally malfunctioned. It became unlatched, and he wasn't able to close it again until, a day later, I guess. And the other thing, both witnesses slept in separate beds, and they both woke up with severe back problems. And Jeff had pain going all the way from his hip to the back of his knee, and he needed chiropractor therapy on lumbar 13, or L3, I should say, for 2 weeks after. And Mark's back problems persisted for 2 weeks, and Jeff's chiropractor was just baffled. He says, "What's happened to you?" He couldn't figure out, how all this, happened, in just one night. And I should say too that during the weeks after, they all had multiple sightings of additional triangles.
Oh my goodness.
Well, yeah. And, after the interview, we drove to Crystal Lake, where Jeff was camping with his children, and they had a sighting. And so, once again, I asked them to point out where everything was. We took measurements, but, nothing was very inconclusive there. It was very conclusive. But next image, on our drive from Brett up to Crystal Lake, we saw literally thousands of these wind turbines. And I began to wonder, could there be any connection? They produce energy, they produce electricity, obviously. Even though they have come under scrutiny by the administration, I think they're beautiful. They're art in the field, and the farmers like them. They get paid a lot to have them on their property and all that. But I won't go into that too far. But I know my electric bills have gone down, not up. Iowa has a lot of these wind turbines, but I don't know if there's a connection between that or not. But anyway, one of the things. Go ahead, Margie.
Oh, well, of course, my mind is racing here, not knowing this case, but I've seen turbines, as I travel across the U.S., seen quite a few of them. They do emit a sound, and of course, they emit EMFs. So that does bring into question: are the UFOs checking them out to see what they are? Are they taking energy from them?
Yeah.
What is the interest? I would say that would be a big red flag for me. These things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good point. I think there might be something to that. I know, I've been very close to these, and they do make a whoop 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 sound, as they turn. It's not too loud or anything, but I know that there are farmers in the area who don't like them, because they think it ruins the scenery and all that. But I think if you live by these wind turbines all the time, you might grow tired of them. I don't know, but anyway, one of the things that Mark said really intrigued me, and I could not get it off my mind. He said that there were so many sightings in red that they just took them for granted. And so about 2 years later, I organized a Skywatch, at Brett, with a friend of mine, her young daughter, and a couple other MUFON members. And this is our campsite. I took along my 2 kayaks and found out all too soon that Crystal Lake is very shallow. We'd hit the bottom with our paddles.
Oh.
But, yeah. And we camped for 2 nights, and I had a screen tent that you see there on the right, which accommodated actually 6 of us. And we didn't see anything. And it turned out that there was also a Boy Scout jamboree that was going on at the same time, which wasn't too good for camping, but I took advantage of this by I asked some of the organizers of this Boy Scout jamboree or camp out. I asked several of them. I just went up to them and said, have you witnessed? You live around here. Most of them are farmers. I said, have you witnessed any unusual things in the sky? And I did not get any positive responses. And I think it was Bev's as well. They might not have wanted to talk about it just because of the stigma involved. But I didn't get that feeling at all. They seemed very open about it, but I did. I think it was that afternoon or so. I struck up a conversation with a young woman out there who was camping with 5 or 6 children, all about the same age. And it turned out that they were students of hers. She was a teacher who commuted all the way to Cedar Falls to teach. I think that's about 50 miles or something. But she was very eager to tell me about her sighting. She said that one night she was coming home after dark and a light followed her all the way home, and she just became frantic practically because she could not shake this light. And it didn't disappear until she finally turned into her driveway. So that's about it with this case. Of course, it went down as an unknown UAVs, plural. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Well, that's a heck of a case.
Yeah.
What do you think it is, besides the wind turbines, which really are sticking in my mind? But what else? What other features are there in that neck of the woods that might be attracting attention?
Well, I don't know. Once again, we have the lakes. I don't know. There's Crystal Lake and what's the other lake? Clear Lake. There, I'm sorry. And as far as that's where the Iowa River starts at Crystal Lake. I don't know. Other than that, I can't think of anything else that would be attracting this, except maybe just the fact that it's so sparsely populated.
We have a number of lakes and rivers in Missouri, and we've got a lot of UFO sightings around and over and in the water, in the rivers or the lakes, and especially in the Kansas City area. Blue Springs Lake is well known for UFOs, and Larry Tyree, who used to be the chief investigator for Missouri, who's now moved to Illinois. He lived near Blue Springs Lake, and he would every night just about could see UFOs going in and out of the lake at high speeds, very, very high rates of speeds. and not disturbing the water at all, just going into it like it was butter. Just didn't behave like normal craft. Traveling as much as, I believe 8,000 miles an hour was the fastest, but somewhere in that area where you don't see them with the naked eye, but well, a few of them you do. Lots of people have seen them with the naked eye, but so that just makes me wonder, with all the water that you've got there, if that isn't. But this case with multiple UFOs, these cases that you've worked on here, but especially this one, I'll just pull this one back up. Those are phenomenal. Those are extremely rare. And I just wonder them, but they didn't come forward. Do you know if there were any sightings on the other reporting sites that showed up, like in UFORC or anything like that?
The other, what do you mean by the other reporting sites?
The National UFO Reporting Center, or other sites that take reports, but they don't investigate.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know if we checked those or not. This is quite a while ago that this case took place, and we probably did, but we didn't come up with anything positive on that. I mean, you live in a state where the whole state is really a hot spot,
Yeah. It is, but we've got water everywhere, every corner of the state.
Right.
Just about. So I'm thinking that's why.
Well, Iowa has a lot of waterways. We're surrounded by rivers on each side, and we have tributaries everywhere. And I think as Greg, someone asked Greg about, is it water? Because we've, of course, obviously we've had a lot of cases where there are waterways, and the person asked, is that a reason? And Greg says, well, first of all, there's a lot of cities, of course, located along waterways, for one thing, so you get more reports. And we have a lot of water everywhere, so just like Missouri.
Are you working on any cases at the moment that you find of interest?
Oh, yeah, if you have the time. And I don't have the case number on this because I haven't really planned on it, but we had another case in the mid part of the state with a woman who was I guess she's middle-aged. It's one of my cases that eventually wound up as an ERT case that you probably know Fred Ziwi. He ended up taking the ERT part of the case. But this woman, it turned out that she had 3 implants in her body, one by her lip, I think one by her shoulder, and one in her forearm. And she decided to get one removed. So she went to a physician up at Iowa State University to remove it. And, it showed up on the MRI, and the person who operated the MRI, the technician, I guess you'd say, said that she thought it kept moving around and it was hard to get a good image. Well, the surgery took place, and she had to be, rather than a local anesthesia, because it was just a pea-sized area, it's a very simple removal. They had to put her under general anesthesia because of the pain, and this is typical with implants. So anyway, he took it. He said he removed it, and she looked at her wound, and it took 10 stitches to close that wound. It was 6 inches long, and she said to the physician, "Do you mind? I want to see it." And he goes, "Well, no, I can't do that." And she says, "Why not?" Protocol calls for. It's protocol that you can not only see what's taken out of your body, but you're allowed to take possession of it. And yeah, and so anyway, a couple months go by, and she noticed that it was still there. Well, that is why he didn't want. That's why he didn't want to show her the
He
object.
couldn't.
He couldn't find it.
Oh my goodness! It kept moving away. Yeah, I've
Yeah, that's
seen a number of cases like that. That's
yeah.
crazy.
At least that's my speculation anyway. That the reason he didn't want to show it to her. He said he didn't have it.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a good
Yeah.
one too, David. You keep getting these good ones,
Yeah.
so please come back
I do. Yeah.
sometime and
All
share
right.
some more with us. I'd appreciate it.
If you can stand me, I'll do that.
Absolutely. That's been great. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Thank you,
we
Margie.
are.
Yeah,
This is a. Thank you. This is a wrap for MUFON Midwest for the week, and we'll see you here again next week.